you. All righty, let me get situated here. Thumbs up. Are you able to see my screen okay? Awesome.
Yes.
All righty. Thank you for that kind introduction. As Shauna said, my name is Patty, and I'm a partner success slash trainer also with Ready Rosie, and was super excited to be able to hear about all the work that all of you do in your program, and most importantly, talking on a topic such as just being culturally responsive. And I had the great opportunity recently to provide some in-person training at a National Head Start Conference in Orlando, Florida, and had the opportunity to talk with some educators on this specific topic and how to introduce culture in the classrooms and reflecting families. So I'm super excited to be able to share this next hour with you. I want today's training to be interactive, so feel free to unmute yourself, use the chat box to continue just to communicate with me with any questions or ideas or comments or anything that just sparks that excitement and just wanting to just elaborate on some discussion. I'm not sure if you can hear within my voice. I'm kind of getting over a cold myself, so bear with me. I'm fully prepared with cough lozenges and my water, so I'm hoping that we're going to be okay this next hour. But in reviewing just this past webinar that Teddy provided to you, and just really talking about the cultural spectrum and the importance of that, and just reflecting on last webinar that we had on cultural competency, and it's important as you're learning where you are at within the spectrum as you're working with children and adults. Today, what I want to do is reflect on that. I want to hear maybe some takeaways, maybe some things that you learned from that, or maybe some information that you've incorporated this week in your own work. But I also want to walk away today within this next hour of identifying some strategies of how to create a culturally responsive classroom for all of you as well. And so, as we're taking a look again at the spectrum, I listened to your last training with Teddy, and just going over each of these areas. As she started to talking about, first of all, just being aware. That cultural awareness and understanding the differences between yourselves and from others, from the families that you work with. I forgot to mention my background also, as I started as a Head Start teacher 25 years ago, and actually worked with a Head Start program for up to 25 years. Up to 3 years ago, I joined the Teaching Strategies family. But as a teacher in the classroom as well, the opportunity to meet, as all of you are on the front lines, meeting families and meeting families where they're at and learning, about their culture and that awareness. I don't know about you, but for me, it was very exciting to be able to just open my own eyes and my own horizons, but most importantly, bringing that culture in the classroom and really coaching parents and just being that cheerleader to bring them in to share everything they had with their children, and sharing with children in the classroom. But this cultural awareness of that opportunity, just to be aware of how others perceive school in itself, or as all of you as teachers, and what they have to bring, the funds of knowledge that they have to bring to your classrooms. So I just wanted to reflect a little bit on each of these competencies. Is there anything that any of you would like to share about, maybe even this past week, as you thought about each of these competencies? Is there any examples that you were provided this last week in practicing, and where you were at within the spectrum? Feel free to unmute yourself, or feel free to use the chat box at any time. Okay. Um, just a second spectrum on here was this cultural sensitivity, and just being aware of the different cultures and similarities between all of us, whether it be positive or negative, better or worse, or right or wrong. I started thinking about an example of, as when I was in the classroom, I had a specific family. I believe the background was of an Indian descent, and for some reason, I didn't see parents quite a bit in bringing their child to school. It would be relatives or it would be others. And I think I basically just saw the parent at intake, but I really tried to gain a partnership and really tried to gain understanding the background, of the parent. And there was a parent teacher conference, and I was excited to know that the parent accepted and was going to come into the classroom to meet me. And again, this was a parent that was just kind of absent, and I wasn't really able to form partnership with her just simply because there wasn't much communication. But it was in the month of May, and I live in California. And in the month of May, we start to get pretty hot days here. The days start nearing over the 3-digit mark. And as mom came into my classroom, I noticed she was wearing a very thick wool coat. And my first thoughts, of course, were, boy, it's a pretty hot day today to be wearing a full, it was a wool, beautiful wool coat. But nonetheless, I couldn't really understand, why she was wearing that. But we carried on our parent teacher conference, and we had just a great conference. But the following day, my student asked me and said, teacher, were you excited that my mom came into our classroom? And of course I said, oh yes, I had such a great time learning about your mom and learning about everything, how she enjoys your learning in the classroom. And so the student then shared with me, I wanted to let you know that my mom almost didn't come because she didn't have something nice to wear. And so she had picked that wool coat. And so as I'm thinking about culture and I'm thinking about sensitivity, and I'm thinking also about, as Teddy mentioned as well, just sometimes that culture that has to do with poverty as well. And that representation, as I look at the word culture, culture just expands into so much. It just involves in so much learning that you can gain from. I know we talked about language and we talked about lived experiences, but just for that opportunity as a teacher, for me to be even more aware of culture and what that meant for this family as well. So as Teddy said, within your last training, you're always going to be bouncing back and forth on the spectrum, hopefully getting to that point of the cultural humility to be able to recognize when there needs to be that change, and accepting how you can make a difference to make that change as well. So before I move on from the spectrum, is there anyone that has any comments, any personal examples as well? I know working front lines as well, it's always exciting to hear from you and the work that you're doing. And I know today we'll be talking about implementing culture in the classroom. Is there any examples? Want to make this as interactive as possible today to learn from you as well. Okay, great.
I do have something. Sorry, my internet's a little slow, so that's why I have my video off.
Oh,
I just in home visiting, I had a family and I wasn't able to attend live in the last recording, but I was able to watch it. And I could relate to taking off the shoes because I had a family that I worked with that, when we go in, we ask, and um, she anytime I went there, she was always cleaning. It was cleaning and she wouldn't stop cleaning. And she said, it's just in my culture. Like when we're home, we just clean all the time. We don't have a TV. We don't. So it was just a different experience for me and learning from their culture.
thank you. Thank you for that. The sharing of that experience. You're absolutely right. I think it's so important for us to be able to get to that point where you are able to hear and see about those cultures, and what a opportunity for a home visit to be able to gather that information as well. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else working in the field of teaching? There's always such exciting opportunities to learn from families. Okay, feel free again to use the chat box at any time, or unmute yourself as well as you come up with any ideas. So let's talk about creating a responsive, welcoming classroom. We know that creating responsive, welcoming classroom includes both, the teaching environment as well as the physical environment. And culturally responsive teaching is how instructional staff demonstrate through strategies their own cultural competence. So let's look at both it being a culturally responsive teacher and then also creating a welcoming classroom. So as we talk about bringing culture into the classroom, for children, their families, and caregivers, culture comes up in discussions all the time. And, they may start with, first of all, just really getting to know your students, such as the daily routines, excuse me, hopefully there's opportunities where you're able to just kind of hear about a daily routine of a family and how that works. Of course, if you're working with infants and toddlers, you gain more information, just said sleeping patterns and, feeding patterns and toileting patterns as well. I used to work with a migrant program, and part of the daily routines is that the infants would come in swaddled in really heavy blankets. And whether it be summer or whether it be winter, parents always used to come in and have their babies swaddled, in those blankets. So it's just a great opportunity for you just to be able to hear about those daily routines as well. And not only that, but how, after hearing about that information, how can you implement that within your own programs? Is there that I want to say that openness where you're able to incorporate maybe what a family's doing at home, also incorporating within your classroom? So really getting to know your families, really getting to know your students, and keeping that consistent communication going so families can continue to offer that information to you. I know that there are several different examples, such as just communication that takes place either through a paper form or maybe through some sort of social media form where you're able to continue that communication with families. But maintaining that consistent communication really continues just to support learning all about what's taking place at home, as well as learning expectations, what families want children to be able to learn by the end of the school year versus what mandates may have or what assessments may need to be completed, but really learning about what are families' expectations, what do they want their children to learn, or as a family, speaking of family engagement, what is a goal that a family may have at the end of the school year, leaving your program in your classrooms as well. Now, also in talking about families, excuse me, learning about behavior and discipline as well. How do families, how is behavior handled in the home? And what type of discipline is handled in the home? I think that also is just great conversation as well, to be able to learn on, where a child comes from. When a child comes into your classrooms, as you know, they're not a blank slate. They come with so much. Again, just that the funds of what they've learned from their family. So just to be able to learn about that behavior and discipline, and then also the relationships with peers and adults, the relationships that they have with extended family members, or perhaps maybe it's community, really learning more about the relationships and the networks that families have around their own families and their students. And then also learning about families' hopes and their own goals for their own, their own well-being in their lives, and just being able to learn all about this. So, as you're learning and just have that opportunity to learn throughout the school year about all of these things that families bring to you, I want you to think about how you can incorporate many of these things also within your classrooms. Is there any examples that you can share of how you gather this information, perhaps maybe it be at the beginning of the year or mid-year? How do you gather this information? And I'd be really curious to know how you implement this in your classrooms. Anybody like to share? I know as a past teacher, we had a strengths needs assessment form at the beginning of the year. And not only did we capture information such as, tell me about your daily routines, tell me about, there were nutrition questions and just questions to getting to know the family, but also on this form, we also asked if there were any specific skills that families had, or there were any specific talents or anything they'd like to share in the classroom. I'll tell you, just by those types of questions gave that open opportunity to hear about families that were great cooks, or opportunities where families incorporated certain traditions in their home, which lended the opportunity to extend those types of opportunities to implement in the classroom. So whether it be storytelling, or maybe somebody had a musical talent, it was, many times where parents would share with me, they played the guitar, and I'd invite them to come in and share that experience with our children. And it happened to be in the language of Spanish. So many children were given that opportunity to hear some childhood Spanish songs in Spanish that families were able to share. But just asking those specific questions at the beginning of the year really helps for you to be able to incorporate that. I see Penny.
She does. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're gonna say she has a questionnaire she sends out at the start. It asks about what the family enjoys doing together, favorites of the child, how do they put them down for a nap, who do they play with. And Penny is a family child care home provider, so she is watching children of all different ages and works out of her home. She provides her early care business out of her home, so she's in a different perspective of some of our schools or some of our childcare centers. One thing that had come to mind, Patty, when you were talking, was the family engagement piece and incorporating that, the goals with families, and having families really kind of be that partner with their child's education or their child's learning opportunities that you provide. And I don't know how many of you have ever done the family engagement program with Getting Started. That focuses on, like, just pick one goal to get going with, just to introduce families to understanding that it is a partnership. And then if that goes well, then encourage them to pick two more goals. And I think it's an interesting concept, especially in a lot of our communities that have maybe a high influx of refugees, or communities that have a lot of very large different demographics within a small area. So in some of those families, education, they as parents may not have experienced that, or weren't exactly familiar with how childcare and education is provided here in the United States when they're so new here, and just so very overwhelmed with just life. And so you wouldn't think that maybe reaching out and asking them, what is the goal for your son? And it can be so simple. It could just be like, that he's, doesn't cry when I drop him off, something so easy. And I think that's a really important step of just kind of creating that partnership, but also just kind of starting to build that cultural wellness too, that, their familiarity with childcare and school is maybe, and not something that they've ever experienced before, but it's a really high expectation that their children are participating in activities with other children and kind of being included and becoming part of the community. So that's just something I'm just reflect on, Patty, as you were talking. I feel like that's such an easy thing, but sometimes we overlook it because we just assume, like, well, they got to go to work from 5:30 to 2:30. So I'm going to be the place where they drop their children off, and not really kind of inviting them and being that partner.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shauna, for that information. You're absolutely right. Having that opportunity to learn those hopes, those goals that families have for their children, and being able to implement that on your own goal setting with families as well. As you start those conversations, it's a great way to share with teachers and how to expand even more, into the classrooms as well. And thank you for sharing as well, Penny, your own examples, incorporating that in your home daycare. I think it's beautiful that you have a family wall where you put up all the pictures of your children and their families as well. I've always loved seeing those types of pictures in classrooms as we go, and it just reflects that community as well. And not only for children, but as families walk in, being able to see those similarities within their families as well. I see here Penny has shared she has a parent from Ukraine, and she called childcare kindergarten, which is confusing to me as her other child is in kindergarten and at school while the 2-year-old is here at childcare. So great opportunities again for you to just to bring that awareness and that learning from other countries as to how childcare is referred to. I was reviewing the last webinar as well and saw many great examples as well that you brought from your work with families from Ukraine. I had the opportunity about 2 years ago to provide some training in the great state of Hawaii, and I was able to go to a childcare site. And at a childcare site, they also had their families reflected in their classrooms. And one of the similarities there was every family had a picture that was by the ocean. And I just thought, how beautiful as well, just to be able to share that within their own classroom and families as well. So it's, I wish we could have some sort of a virtual field trip where we would be able to go into see classrooms and see how culture is, reflected in each of our classrooms. But thank you again for that information. And again, just getting to know your families, getting to know your students, and most importantly, really trying in any way that you can to keep that consistent communication going to continue to learn from families. Now, as we're talking about communication and how families operate within, their own homes and thinking about their own lived experiences, here, for example, we see a family who uses the bedboards for their children. And I know Teddy kind of touched on that a little bit during your last webinar, but just an opportunity to learn from, their this culture on the bedboards and how they're used in their homes. I know for me, that would just be a great opportunity for additional learning, because I come from a family that doesn't use bedboards, but what a great way just to learn about that tradition and that. But as you see here, for example, there's a picture of a parent in the middle. It looks like maybe a father and a son talking to one another. And so as we're looking at culture, that could be just an opportunity to share some information. It could be maybe some discipline taking place. We don't know. And so just having that opportunity just to be able to learn, from families. You'll see here that we have a family up in the right-hand corner where they're talking. And again, that could be many different reasons why they're coming together. It could be a family meeting. It could be an opportunity to talk about, what's going to take place later in the day. But as we're taking a look at each of these pictures, we want to just be reminded that perspectives can be quite different in what we're taking a look at. This little girl here on the bottom, she could be on a timeout, or maybe she's chosen to have her own time alone as well. So as we're taking a look at working with families and incorporating in the classroom their own cultures, we want to also keep in mind, the different perspectives. So as we're looking at your classrooms and, and creating a responsive, welcoming classroom, I want you to just kind of first think about, as children come in, how do you learn, say, for example, there's so many different pronunciation of names. And as Shauna introduced me, Hinojosa is not the easiest name to say, but I'm curious about all of you when you meet children in your classrooms. What are some practices that you have, first of all, just to kind of learn and pronounce their names? Is there anybody here that'd like to share?
Every time we do home visiting, but we bring kiddos in a couple of times per month for the social piece. And every time they come, we sing a song in the beginning and when they leave, and we incorporate their names when we say hello and goodbye.
Oh, that's so awesome to be implementing that in song. Thank you for sharing. That's great. I'm sure, Penny, with your families from your Ukraine, there have been some interesting names to learn as well of children. Anybody else? Okay, great. So just as we're thinking about our classrooms and thinking about welcoming the classrooms. If you can find songs, just as it was shared right now about pronouncing the children's name, incorporating that into your activities, right? What a great way to incorporate that culture and welcoming children in your classroom. And as well as, as you create your classrooms, all of you have designated spaces for each child to put their own, specific belongings, as well as we heard about, family pictures displayed in your classrooms of their children and families, and just having those visual representations of their own culture. As I shared when I was in Hawaii, the culture there was many families would go to the ocean for their family gatherings. So there was many of those pictures. But what an awesome opportunity for you to be able to display those in your classrooms as well. Those of you that do have your family photos up, is there a specific area that you put them in? Is there a way that you incorporate that in your daily lesson plans? I'd love to hear how maybe you're incorporating that. Okay. As I think back about my classroom time as a preschool teacher, what I would do is I would have each child share their pictures, and they'd share their own family memories as well. So that provided each child that opportunity to do that. And I'll tell you, I even extended that to my parent meetings. As I grew to know families a little better, and they felt that confidence, they would share with other family members the pictures that our children brought in, and they would share their own cultures, they'd share their foods. And I'll tell you, that eventually extended to parents asking for a demonstration of maybe a cooking exercise from a family member as well. So it was a great way to extend from the classroom to family engagement through a parent meeting, other families seeing those similarities. Now, many of you, and I think Teddy mentioned this as well, is having those welcome signs in your classrooms in the various languages that you work from, as well as just a great way to be able to extend that culture, and just in that, looking at that physical environment. And I'm sure that you have books also that represent just different cultures as well. And what a great way as well to have families even participate with sharing and creating books, maybe with having the opportunity to bring pictures in. And I'm going to date myself here, but even making books, we used to make books out of large baggies, and out of the large baggies we would put poster boards in the middle, and families would bring pictures, and we'd make our own book to put in our library of different cultures as well. I see here that Penny shared that we do Star of the Week in the summer, where each child brings in their favorite book and item and pictures to share. We do their favorite foods, and the child is the Star of the Week. Awesome. What a great opportunity to be able to share all that families have to bring. Is there any ideas or anything that you'd like to add to this that maybe you're currently doing in your classroom, or maybe an idea that you're thinking, something that you could extend in your classroom? Any ideas at all? Okay.
How many of you guys have used the Ready Rosie videos with the showing the pictures of the families and having that conversation of who's in the picture and where are you and what time of the season do you think it is? I mean, I just watched it just the other day. So, I mean, that's just one. Maybe Patty can speak to the maybe other multiple Ready Rosie videos that do incorporate family photos, but they are on there. Just curious, any of you guys from the community centers have anything you want to input? You're always so talkative, and today you're so quiet. Are you just in a place where you can't speak today?
Well, this is Carolyn Sabin. I'm in North Platte, and I'm more of the administrator role here, but I'm just trying to get some ideas for our providers, because we have the possibility of having a beef plant brought into the area. So, we're going to expect the influx of a lot of, or possibly the influx of families of different backgrounds. So it's great to have these ideas, but if there is a list of the Ready Rosie videos that are specifically for cultural awareness, that would be great to know, so that I could suggest that to our providers, because I think they kind of get in a spot where if they're going to send a playlist, maybe they don't have lot of time to make a quick decision. And so if there were those available, that would be helpful. But before I did this, I spent 25 years as a classroom teacher. So we had to pull all kinds of things out of our hat of tricks, and this is the time of year we would always celebrate Chinese New Year. We made the kites and the dragon things, and the kids just love it. They just feel so excited to learn about a different culture. So I think you just can't overlook some of those national or international holidays. So
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Carolyn. Our Ready Rosie Library extends within the languages of not only English and Spanish, but in subtitles. You'll see languages that support simplified Chinese, Khmer, Arabic, Dari, Samoan, Vietnamese, and Haitian Creole. So you'll see that extension within our library videos as well. As perhaps maybe there's a lesson in your classroom, or perhaps maybe even an opportunity to provide some parents some information, you'll see that our library has a great wealth of information where you can simply send an individual playlist, an individual video, or create that playlist as well. As I learn more about the specifics of what you're looking for, I'd be more than happy to put together a list of videos that can also share with you. I can share with you as well. But in our resources tab, we have numerous alignments as well, where you'll be able to share videos that would even support what's taking place either in your homes or your classrooms. Thank you for sharing that. So just some of the ways that you can incorporate within your own classrooms, of course, and you're probably doing all this, but using, a variety of different objects for math, sorting, like socks or things from nature, as well as what we heard today about incorporating song, incorporating movement really supports just that call and response, but also incorporating stories. If you can gather those stories from families, or create your own books that families can help you to create to add to your classrooms. But it sounds like you're doing a great job with incorporating even just your family boards and implementing that information as well. But just some great ways that you can continue to add culture into your classroom by looking at those different ways that you can incorporate there. And then also just within your learning stations and your centers, offering the opportunity to maybe think about how you can incorporate maybe a childhood game that a family member may have that can incorporate it into something that children can do, outside or in your classroom, or maybe even when the time comes where families can come back safely into your classrooms and take the lead in being a leader for your learning stations or centers. But I'll tell you, some of my best games I learned from my families and learning from their own cultures, maybe childhood games, as well as, having that opportunity where others would be able to see that. So great ways for you to be able to implement that also into your learning stations. So just want to recap here, as a teacher and being just culturally responsive, it's important to have a plan of how you're going to gain that information, how to interact with your families, but most importantly, just to really learn all about the cultures represented by your families, whether it be through a strength and needs assessment, or whether it be through goal setting, or that opportunity to learn about those skills that families have. It's just a great way for you to be able to incorporate that into what you're doing. And of course, we always want to have high expectations for our children, and we want to learn about the goals that families have for their own children as well. And getting to know children's names and their interests, their own securities, their fears as well. Learning to learn more about their own lived experiences and knowing how to incorporate that into your classrooms. It's important to not assume that families come in knowing how school works. There are different assumptions, different perceptions, different past experiences. So we want to make sure that families are aware of all that you have to offer. As Penny mentioned, just the understanding of childcare in kindergarten. I think that was just so interesting as well, to be able to learn the differences with that. And then also having that positive perspective of always looking back on our cultural spectrum to be able to see where we're at with learning about culture. And then also, continue to see all children as developing experts and continuing to grow their own mini funds of knowledge as well. So I want to just share with you just some research that was provided to us, as well as children that are in more diverse classrooms. They have an increased level of that critical thinking. They have that curiosity and that openness to the world. They're more motivated to achieve. They're motivated to go on to post-secondary school. They have that great intellectual self-confidence and engagement in school with each other, with other children. They have a great understanding that group differences are compatible with societal unity as well. They have a higher level of motivation to understand the perspectives of other people. They're have higher levels of citizenship and more involvement in their community, and they're more likely after graduation to have those networks of friends and neighbors and coworkers. So what an opportunity for you to provide these young ones the opportunity to have that diversity in the classroom, to provide this for your children. So what I want to do is I want to share, this is a short video by Dr. Karen Nemeth, and she talks a little bit about parents as their first teachers. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a listen to this short video.
I think it's really important to ask questions about how a child learns. And families have so much to give to help their child learn and succeed. And it turns out that a lot of what we've learned about learning two languages or growing up with two languages has shown us that the things that a child learns in their home language with their family at home really build their whole foundation of knowledge, so that when they get to school, they know a lot of things. They might surprise you how much you can teach your child at home when you're cooking or fishing or gardening or playing together. And that actually creates a fund of knowledge, like the foundation of a house. And then when they get to school, they learn new language to build on that foundation. But families are the child's first teacher. And that's where they learn the things they need to build both in their home language and in English. And the other important thing is that when you support that home language, you're also supporting your child's connection to his culture and to the members of his family who live in the house, members of his family that live in other parts of the neighborhood or the world. And those histories of the families are so important in helping children grow and learn and become those adults that you really want them to be.
All righty. Next, I want to show you, I want to share one more video with you, and this is from Dr. Irasema that talks about diversity in the classroom. So let me see if I can get to that next. There we go.
As educators, it is very important that we make our families very welcomed in the classroom. We need to understand that they might have had several experiences with education. Maybe they went through an education program where their language was not valued. And although they are second generation or third generation person that lives in the United States, they don't feel very comfortable coming to school. And then other parents might feel very comfortable coming to school, but they feel that, you know what, my language is not valued, or my culture is not valued, or I don't have the proper dress to go and speak to the teacher. So as teachers, it is very important that we communicate to them in their language. And when we cannot communicate with them in their language, find somebody that can translate. And then when you cannot find somebody that can translate, as you're communicating with the parents, use visuals, use videos, use things that will encourage parents to come. Some parents might not come to your meetings because they don't have a caretaker, somebody that can take care of younger brothers or sisters. So in their mind, I can't come because it's going to be not proper or not appropriate for me to bring all the other children. So provide some sort of childcare when you're providing workshops or meetings to parents. Some parents might not come to your meetings because they don't have transportation. So again, you have to think about those parents as well. some parents, are living in poverty, so many times they rely on public transportation. So get videos together so that maybe you can send little video clips that relate to the meetings or the workshops that you're providing for them at school that they were not able to make it to. So again, as teachers, it is so important to recognize that parents do care about their children. They might not have the same experiences that you've had. Maybe you had parents that were always there, but not every child comes from the same background. I know that in my case, my mom was always there. But as far as my dad, he wasn't, because that was part of his culture. In his culture, women would go to school, women would take care of their children when they were involved in school, but not males. So as teachers, you have to consider, we have to be very open-minded about why is it that parents are not coming to my classroom, and how can we make them feel welcome. So look at the language, look at the culture, providing daycare services, providing snacks. Some parents are so focused on, I've been working all day and now I have to go to a meeting, my children haven't been fed. So think about the realities that your children are living in your community so that these parents can feel more welcome when they come to your classroom.
So was there anything within these past two videos that we just showed right now that was just something that you heard that you thought, hey, I can do that, or maybe I'm already doing that? Is there any examples that you would like to share?
One of the things that we are implementing here at the center is parenting classes. We used to do parenting classes just in Spanish, or some of them we would interpret them in Spanish from English speakers. But now this year, it's going to be something new that we're going to be trying. We have a navigator who speaks Conjoval, and we have a large number of some participants that also speak Conjoval. So they're going to do a parent time class just in that dialect, which is very exciting because they are very excited to experience something that's going to be their first native language. Like when you speak Spanish and you have an interpreter, they're just telling you all this information, and you feel good, because you're understanding. So I feel like that's how most of the families are feeling right now too, especially with her, because they know that they have somebody who understands them. So it's very interesting to see that, and really interesting how you can implement like diversity within home. I normally do like home visiting, but I know in some of the classrooms here too, the English teachers, what they do, they have like the names of things in other languages that most of the families also speak, like in Quiche or Conjoval, or in different other languages. So, and I just caught yesterday a participant just looking around like the classroom, saying the names of like her native language, and then trying to say it in English. And it was really interesting because I felt like she understood, oh, this is what that meant, like maybe if it was in Spanish, maybe she wasn't going to be able to understand it. But it was nice that there was some diversity in the classroom that caught her eye, which helped her like understand and made her feel welcome.
Wow. Congratulations. Just congratulations on just meeting the needs of your families. And wow, just the learning that's going to take place from there, the networking that's going to take place, those partnerships that are going to build. I'm excited to see the family engagement that is going to extend from you being able to provide that to your families. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure your families are super excited as well. I look forward to hearing about the work that comes from that, and just having that ability again to meet the needs of the families with the languages and providing valued parenting classes. Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else?
Go ahead. I do. I just want to say how much I value our home visitors across the state. Every home visitor. I actually think everybody who has a child should have a home visitor in their life, no matter what your economic status is, what language you speak, or your culture, because that instillment that you are your child's first teacher. When you have a home visitor, that is the priority. That parent is right away understood that they are their child's first educator, and they should be the priority educator. And I think a lot of times um, parents assume that when children start school, that's when they'll be educated. So they're, and not take, I don't want to say they don't take on that role, but not quite invested in knowing from birth that you are the educator, and here's all the things you are probably doing that are educating your child, but here's also some other things you can do. That's why I think home visitation is so, I think everybody should have home visitation, but I love that. But I also think just, those programs that traditionally don't do family engagement opportunities, just to understand that family engagement piece is another way then to support that, just that concept. And, say, yes, your child is with us through the day, but still you are their priority educator, and always having that in the forefront. So I love that first video because it's true, but not everybody always feels that way.
And it's interesting because that's something that we also tell the parents here when we go to the home visiting, like that you are your child's teacher, like I might come into your house and I'm going to give you all these advices and we're going to work on this and we're going to work on this. But at the end of the day, you're going to be their teacher. They're going to come to you, because you see them. Sometimes I go visit them and their kids aren't home. Because they're probably in school or like their little ones are there and I'm only there for 1 hour. So all these activities that we do, they mostly depend on them. And this is what I tell them, that they're the teachers, they're the professional ones, they're the ones that know their kids the best. And then it also like I've had one parent like say, oh, I never thought about it like that, like I never thought that I am actually a teacher. I just think I'm always like a mom, but she's like, you're right. But at the end of the day, I am basically their teacher. And I'm like, yes, you're their teacher, like through so many years, their lives until even when they grow up, you as a mom, you still are a child's teacher because they come to you with all that trust. And sometimes it's different because of like the cultural wise, like what Patty, you said, like your mom, or no, the video, the lady in the video said, my mom was there, but my dad wasn't. And it's just culturally like that too, in some ways, but sometimes having those conversations with parents and knowing that they can have that bond with their child helps them a lot.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. As I'm listening to you as well, and just reinforcing, parents as their child's first teacher. That's one of the things that I really loved about Ready Rosie. I was a customer of Ready Rosie's before I even started working with teaching strategies, and I found that our Ready Rosie videos, they support and put parents in that leadership role to know that they've got those funds of knowledge, just providing them the example of how to play with their children at home and taking the lead with the items that they have at home in their own environments, what a great way for you. And hopefully through your upcoming parenting meetings, you can maybe even incorporate some of those Ready Rosie activities to be able to share with families as well. So just want to share with you as well, these are just some examples of additional research and answer videos that we have within Ready Rosie as well, that can certainly support your own learning, as well as just even sharing with families this information as well. So we'll make sure that you have these topics as well that you can incorporate and just continue to learn on this topic. Today's just been such a great day to hear from you and all the work that you're doing in your schools, and incorporating that cultural sensitivity and diversity with your families and your classrooms, and just some exciting work coming up from your parenting education classrooms too. Hopefully also seeing some examples of what you can incorporate, within your own classrooms. Our next training is going to be on the 26th here, and we're going to be debriefing and reflecting on these past 2 sessions that we've had talking about cultural diversity. And I want to delve a little bit more into incorporating just the cultural wealth of families and the work that you're doing, and the day-to-day, and how to incorporate that with your activities that you're incorporating in your programs as well. So I hope today, then these last, I think it's been about 45 minutes or so, 50 minutes. We've delved into the topic of culture, and it sounds like all of you are just doing such a great job. I hope you're able to take a little bit more ideas today to incorporate in your programs. And I look forward to our next session on just talking more about your families and gaining that cultural wealth as well. Any comments, any questions, any aha moments that you'd like to share?
I have a question, and I'm going to reach out to the Omaha group there, maybe for some advice or ideas of what you've done. So, and we have just a few minutes, so this is what I'm going to ask. The Lexington community, which is a community of a little over 10,000, that is very diverse, recently just took a pretty large number of Afghan refugees, mostly Somali, Sudanese, Latinx, that's the majority of our population, because of the beef packing plant industry and how we recruit families to our community. They're looking at opening they're an early development center, and the theme throughout as we are providing community focus groups on what should be highlighted in incorporating programming into this center if it happens. A lot of people say we have to trust you. You have to have people who look like us that work there and can talk our language, and we need to feel welcome. What have you incorporated into maybe the design of your facility when parents walk in? Is there something relatable to all the different cultures when they walk in? So when they walk in to drop off their child, there's a little bit of something that maybe reflects their culture so that they can feel like my child's welcome here. Because we are at the very beginning stages of just building design. Any advice?
I feel like we don't have anything like that besides like their teachers make their classroom a little bit more diverse in their own way, like they find ways to put some of their language in there. They have their flags all over some of the classrooms too, that in there. And I know that what I've seen in one of the classrooms, they also have been writing like some things in their own language too, and the pictures of their families I've seen too in some of the classrooms. For the children's classroom, I haven't seen like pictures of inside the classroom. I haven't seen anything like that, but I know like outside of the children's classroom, they have like their children's pictures and stuff like that too. But it would be nice, I feel like, if we had if I had like a diverse groups coming into like a center, I think it would be nice to like implement like the flags or something inside the classrooms, or maybe something unique that get to know the families too. What could make them feel welcome? I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
thank
interesting.
you. I appreciate that a lot. I might be leaning on you all in the next few months. When you're starting from a blank slate, and I can ask you guys, like, what would you do different if you could, knowing that you went into a building that you didn't get to make changes. Those are all the things we want to know, because we want to try to do it right the first time. And, cultural awareness is, we're all learning through this. And one of my priorities for my kids is I wanted them to feel welcome, and I wanted to be welcome. So I know that's a priority for them too. And I want to honor that.
Great. Thank you for sharing. All righty. Okay. Well, thank you everyone again for joining us and taking this time out of your afternoon. I appreciate you being here, and I want to thank you for all the valuable work that you're doing for your children and families and your communities. And I look forward to having you join us next week. Have a great
We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Shauna. Bye-bye.